thank you, for having us here on the stage. I can. So we have Nitendra also on the VC. Yeah, hi, good morning, Nitendra. Can you hear us? Great.
Yes, Ruchin, absolutely, loud and clear.
All right, so this is the first panel discussion, we're talking about one of the most disruptive forces today in both businesses and society, artificial intelligence. And as Dr. Sukhi, you very eloquently pointed out, data models are not new. We've had data models for the last 3-4 decades now, or even longer. But what's very different now are really coming together of 4 things. The amount of data that's available today, the world is producing more data in a couple of years than it did in the entire history of the world, right? So the availability of data is going up exponentially. The advanced algorithms that are available today are very different from what was there in the past. The computational power that's available today is of a different order of magnitude, and to bring it all together, we have today user interface on the go that people can access this. So it's no longer just something that data scientists use in their research labs, but it's really available for people. But despite all that, if I bring a practitioner's perspective, as BCG, we did a research of a large number of companies asking the CEOs, right, how much are you investing on artificial intelligence more broadly, right? And what are the returns that you're getting? Only a quarter of the CEOs said they're actually seeing the results, right, in line with the expectations of the investment that they made, right? And this happens with many new technologies. There is a lot of hype in the short term, and sometimes the results take time. So let me just start from that broad theme. Is AI more hype or is it real business? So let me start with you, Nitendra. Just as a practitioner, right, where do you see business benefits, specifically in the BFSI sector, of using AI?
Thank you, Ruchin, for that comment. And definitely, a lot of times what happens is, if you are saying that there is no return on investment and so on, a lot of times what happens is that some organizations try to think of AI as a hammer and then try and find a nail for it. But the right way to it is not to be carried away by the hype of it, but try and focus on the business and try and see what is the business problem that I'm supposed to solve, which can yield revenues and profits and so on. And then ask the question, where or can AI help in that? If we go that way, then usually we are going to try and solve a problem which can generate revenue for us. So I think identifying the problem is definitely one of the most important things. Coming from BFSI, I can give you a very specific example that even in the keynote earlier, we were hearing that fraud detection is a very important aspect. The amount of fraud that happens in the digital world is significantly large. Now, if we can reduce that, that's clear business benefit to any financial organization. And how can you reduce fraud? There are like billions of transactions that flow through a network like ours at Mastercard and so on. Now, you cannot have a rule that says that any transaction more than $200 from country A to country B is supposedly fraudulent, so let me block it. Because if you do that, then the fraudster will take that transaction, move from country A to C, then to B. So the rule is gone. Obviously, an AI algorithm can automatically learn these kind of things and then identify anomalous patterns and therefore block transactions that are fraudulent. So it is a very obvious use case of applying AI, and it solves a specific business problem. And those are some of the obvious cases where we have seen AI leading into business benefits. Just the second point I wanted to mention is that, I remember this quote by Usain Bolt wherein he says that, I have trained for 4 years to run for 9 seconds, which is where I think any investment in a new technology also needs some amount of patience and time and planning. The results do come, but it's not like something that you just or take some open source solution and then put that chatbot in and suddenly expect revenues. I think it has to be a more of a strategic and a patient decision to make, perhaps.
Thank you. As you rightly said, instead of having a great tool, trying to find a problem that can solve. You start from a business problem and, then try and figure out how, the AI can solve it. I think that's a great approach. If I move on to you, Dr. Sukhi, you spoke about in your presentation that AI more broadly, but also Gen AI, can be a great tool to reduce costs, to really, have you said average human being, but, that never tires. I have two questions. One is this promise of cost reduction, has been there for a long time. But, what we see is that costs are very sticky. They don't come down, right? Costs are sticky and they don't come down, right? Most companies, the cost of technology far exceeds the benefits that, the technology promises. So, I mean, we've seen that across the world, banks, the cost-income ratio keeps going up because you need to spend more on regulations, on technology. So is this real that Gen AI can really replace humans and, the cost can come down? And second, you also spoke about, can we look at beyond costs, to look at revenue enhancements opportunities that Gen AI can have?
So regarding the cost, I think it should be acceptable that there is a cost, and it should be looked as a technology. Today, if I want to buy a laptop for my use as an employee, nobody will look at me and say, it's a cost. It's part of my tool set. So AI needs the recognition that it's a tool set, and it may have a cost. I'm paying $20 to AIs to give me pro access and things like that, and it's a tool. The other thing that happens internally is the recognition of the manager and executive that they need it, and it's not just something for the scientists to play with and show some results, and they need to be interested, and I think being accepted as mainstream is the biggest achievement of Gen AI for me, beyond the fancy thing. It's the fact that, we have all those people that came here to listen because it's accepted. And, Debaraj and me were not accepted for many years. I mean, AI, we didn't say AI, we were too humble, but the technology we used made big impact on everything. Many of our things have models that have been built and are working internally, even if nobody calls them AI. So, so this is about the cost. So now, the next thing to be with AI, I think everything that we can describe, we can get it. The important thing is that we can describe, and then the AI, in fact, is filling the gap, is creating the story. So if we can ask for something and the information is out there, we can get it. And with that, I think sky is the limit.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sukhi. Just moving on to you, Dr. Banerjee, and your vast experience both in many industries, but also now BFSI. How should companies, really think about these AI, Gen AI applications to both, deliver benefits on cost, but also revenue enhancements? What has been your learnings?
Yeah. So, a way to think of that is, let me turn the stat that you mentioned around, right? 25 times the number of experiments are happening today that are actually coming out with today's successes. Now, you have to understand that the path to a new technology is not linear, it's not even exponential, it's a J-curve. So we are at the J-curve point of AI adoption. We had very similar things in the early stages of the web. There were multiple protocols being tried out until one succeeded, and it succeeded and took over the world. Same is going to happen with AI. The fact that there are so many models, there's so many approaches, there are so many use cases being tried out, is an indication that people are seeing after all these 30, 40 years of developing AI, that this is the inflection point. Fortune favors the brave. Those who take moonshots get to the moon. The others get left behind. We do not plan to get left behind. Now, coming to cost versus revenue opportunities. So if any of you attended my 8:30 talk, we are actually showing that there are both ways we are using AI. So yes, we are using it in the traditional way of answering customer questions with a lot more considerate communication. An example you can see in our demo booth of our knowledgeable AI Kai. But also, we are using GenAI to find signals that would indicate creditworthiness or otherwise of our existing or future base of customers. That is a new usage. That is unlocking this 90% dark data, unstructured data, in a way that will prove valuable and raise the bottom line in a way that we hope is going to be unlocking financial access to millions and millions of Indians who do not have the traditional digital footprint of bureau records and stuff.
Okay, so I think the takeaway is you think that we are at an inflection point, right? And the fortune favors the brave. You want to add something, Dr. Shuki?
I think personally, and I think it's also meaningful for organization. For me, if I think about myself, AI saved me time. This is the biggest thing for me is time. Second thing is it augments me. I can do things that I'm not good at and do it maybe not as an expert, but do it at the same time. And the outcome is independence. I think organizations, people can be much more independent today because they can complete themselves with this AI. So I need to create a brochure, the AI can do it for me, even I'm not. I need to ideate. This guy never gets tired, so he can work on 5 ideas. I need to build a strategy. There are all kinds of combination that can be reduce the price, go to this market. This guy can analyze as many as I want, and he will not complain. And then, I will take decision. Maybe in the future, AI will take decision, but as a kick side and to do really things which are required a lot of complexity, it's not a problem from him. And I think with that, we see that, I mentioned 10,000 AIs out there. It became a mainstream. If people are building on it and they can create so many in so little time, it's here to stay.
Great. So, we'll move on from the first theme I spoke about is the AI, the hype. Of course, we have, people here who believe very passionately that, AI is not just an hype. You spoke about J-curve and, moonshot. So it requires investments, but it can be a game changer. Let me move on. Another theme about AI is that with the advent of open source, right? And you talked about independence. Everyone has access to similar capabilities now, or at least the world is more democratic today than in the past. In this world, can AI be used by organizations as a differentiator? Or would it be a level playing field that everyone has access to same models, the same LLMs? Let me start with you, Dr. Shuki. What's your...
So I think yes. I think that the first thing is data. If you have more data, specific data that others had, the AI can use it and be more intelligent. The second thing is the AI can do things. Again, you need to think what is the things you want him to do in order to be different. So yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
It's the same like, if you have a good team, is it a differentiator? If the people that you hired are smart, is it a differentiator? the team by itself is not a differentiator, but the thing you can create together can be a differentiator.
Any perspectives on this?
Yeah, so open source versus closed source. I mean, of course, the big break in generative AI, producing a human-like performance with a pretty good MMLU first happened in closed source, right? From a company that paradoxically is named OpenAI. So, so the clock is actually shifting the other way. So now a lot of the closed source models are actually closing that gap pretty well, right? So there are options both ways, and I think this is going to continue for quite some years, where closed source and open source are going to exist side by side. There are advantages in open source in that you can actually take that open source model and more easily fine-tune it, more easily prune it, more easily change it to your specific needs, which closed source does not always offer you. The second part, which is often overlooked, is when you are using a closed source model that is not yours, then you are at the mercy of the use agreements, the use policies of that closed source provider. Some of the use cases that we have actually on demo outside, we used a closed source model from one provider. It did work reasonably well as a proof of concept, but then their end user agreements did not allow us to scale it. So in this particular case, we switched to somebody else, and it did scale. But it was a wake-up call, and I think it should be for everyone, that at some point of time, unless you own your own AI, you're not going to own your destiny. So it is good to start with closed source because it's easy to get started. It is, however, something that every organization needs to decide whether their use cases are critical enough, whether their users are different enough from what those models were trained on, and if their independence has a critical enough value, or is it just a passing value, based on which each organization has to make its own decision whether it should own its own AI or depend on a third-party API.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. So I'll keep moving on in the interest of time. Let me shift focus to another theme. Of course, we are in the financial services space. It's a highly regulated space, and it's important, that when we use AI more responsibly than many other industries. Of course, every industry has to use AI responsibly, but I would say that the onus on financial services is even higher than many other industries. So let me start, Nitendra, by you. What have been your learnings on how do you start thinking about responsible AI by design, right? From the word go.
Yeah, thanks, Ruchin. And I think the most important thing here is to again ask the question, what are we building our AI solutions for? Who are we building it for? In the financial services space, you said, yes, regulations are there and so on. But the reality is also the fact that we are building these solutions for our customers. End users, if they do not trust any specific financial entity, they are not going to use that system. Irrespective of the regulations, therefore, we have to think of our customers first in building the solution. And if we have to think of our customers in the financial space, we have to think of earning their trust. If we are thinking of earning their trust, then obviously the first thing that we start to think about is how do we secure their data? How do we ensure that the data is going to be used for the purposes that they have provided it for us? How do we ensure that that data will not get lost anywhere else? How do we ensure that we do not make any decisions that are supposed to be not made by using their specific personal and demographic type of information and so on? So as soon as we start thinking of customer first, automatically we start to realize that we have to have a governance mechanism within the organization so that we figure out the specific correct usage of data. We figure out if that any sensitive information is leaking into our models or not. We figure out if there are any biases in the system that are making any judgments which should not be made based on some demographic information. So automatically we start to get into these pieces which actually are frameworks of a typical AI governance model. Most organizations definitely have a very good AI governance framework which deals with starting from the scratch, which is the data, until not only the deployment but also end of deployment as to how it is being used and continuously monitor that. So that process is there. Now regulations, honestly speaking, in AI are coming up. There are variations to it and there are discussions around it and so on. So we have to comply with those regulations and they'll settle in soon. But as an organization, if we put our customers first, most of the times we are going to fit in any regulation that will come in as well. So that may be a good thinking to have in mind, which automatically will bring in customer first, which means responsible first as we develop our AI solutions.
Thank you, Nitendra. Just building on this, Dr. Sukhi, you also spoke in your presentation. When you build model governance, regulations, there is a level of bureaucracy that comes in, right? Bureaucracy. So you spoke about, on one side, the need to be agile, that, you have now AI that can actually build models, right? So you can, in the matter of, few days, you can have a model out there. But if you need to have responsible AI, you need to have model governance, somebody who can explain. How do you see this, paradigm or trade-offs between innovation and being responsible, right?
So I think it has several facets, but one thing is a lot of the processes in financials requiring approvals. Before you do something, someone needs to sign, okay, go to production or something. There need to be a change and things should be sent out with responsibility and be monitored, and if there is something that is going wrong, it's, there are all kinds of techniques of replacing it with something else which is the challenger, but the whole concept of going to committees and looking at papers cannot work, and there are tools today that enable you to do the simulation faster before and monitor things in production after. So I think there should be a change in the trust or and again, it's not enough that you want to do it, the regulator need to agree to that. So it's also a matter of talking to the regulator, and we are doing that and trying to, I don't know if to educate them or to brainstorm with them, but we have tools today to do things in real time and fix things and monitor things and identify biases and even explainability. Many of these boxes today are black box, and then the committee will ask, if this change, what will happen, and you need to explain to them. So explainability is also about creating trust and letting people trust, but explainability also explains a lot of things. So you can learn, you can understand that in fact there is a group of customers that not behaving like the others and they need a special model. So I think this transition to trustworthy AI, which, it just became popular now, but this problem exists since always. When we ever learned from data, there were biases and all those things. Now it came to the mainstream, and it's good that it came, because we can be better and we can learn more. Much of the frustration I had during the years was that the interest of people to appreciate my models were looking at the numbers. What was your accuracy? And in fact, if you can open the model and show them why this number came out, the value is an order of magnitude larger. The business can learn something about the business itself, about the customer. So I think all this trend is positive. It's important that it's creating, and you know, if there is motivation, the balance will be there. And I invite everyone to look at, there is so many startups today that look at fairness, drift, explainability, security. You know, the market is responding to that already.
All right, so I think I take away the key word here is balance. You know, you need to have a balance, and that's the only way we can, you know, go ahead. So let me come to the last theme of the discussion. It's really about talent, right? Because any AI, ultimately, in the organization, you need people to be able to innovate, to be able to consume it. And I think there are two ways of looking at it, right? One is you go and hire the best data scientists who are capable of doing, you know, you talked about differentiation, versus everybody in the organization knowing a little bit of AI. How should companies think about talent, you know, between these two paradigms? Dr. Banerjee, to you.
Yeah, so, you know, there are kind of two types of talent you need in order to enable a company to make it a truly AI-first company. So one is the talent that you need who are going to actually build AI, both applications as well as, I wouldn't say necessarily fundamental models, but variants and fine-tunings and other things of the models. And these need to be you know, fairly well-talented individuals coming with the right mix of curiosity, capability, and quite frankly, a good background in math, which is you know, not always easy to find, especially if you're trying to build it here. Now, that is your core. But the real value, I believe, in making an organization AI first comes from democratizing AI, letting every employee who would want to use AI tools to use it, and then have among them champions come up and share their feats, so to say, of, okay, I use this model in this kind of prompt for this kind of data, and I achieved this. And share them among the rest of the organization. And then from there, take those examples and then build, and then have this core team build them into more robust applications that go back into serving that use case at scale for everyone else in the organization. So it's a combination of talent that needs to have that core capability, and you can't compromise on that. But the other part is you already have the talent. You just have to get them conversant with AI. Don't hold back. Let it flow, and let them come up bottoms up.
Your perspective, Shuki?
Dr. Debaraj talked about democratizing AI, and I want to mention that for me it's even more important is to democratize data. And in fact, the first application that we did with Gen AI was to enable people to, we called it chat with your data. So you can ask questions about, you know, how were my sales, what is the amount of NPL, what are the 5 big accounts, by using the prompt. This was the first thing we did, in fact, with the Gen AI when we got hold of the preview of OpenAI. Let people talk with numbers and not do blah blah and high buzzword and things like that. Come with the number. Show me the number. This is critical if you want to have an effective discussion. And it cannot be that someone says, you know, how many active customers we have, and then we call an analyst and get the number for the next board review, and the number is not right anymore. So having immediate access to data is one of the cool applications for Gen AI for us.
Excellent. So we are almost at the end of the time. You know, if there are any questions in the audience, if anyone wants to ask any of the panel members. or I'll just summarize. I think the timer is ticking down. So we had as I said, we had a really fascinating discussion. Just to summarize, I think this panel believes that, we are at an inflection point. AI, could be the next big disruptor. You spoke about, Dr. Banerjee, the way internet disrupted things. And it takes time. It takes time for the real business disruption to come in. But, if you are brave, if you, aim for the moon and the moonshots, then, we can get there. And I think the path towards that has to be that we have to have a balanced approach, take the entire organization together with us, right? And, the path has to be responsible AI, that we don't, let models, have biases and have unintended consequences. But if we can take care of these challenges, the future of business could look very different for the companies that really boldly embrace the power of AI. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.